village was small, but full of life. It sat in a valley, surrounded by hills that were covered with grass, trees, and flowers. The houses were made of wood and stone, and their roofs were covered with straw. The air smelled fresh and earthy, like the scent of plants and soil, and the sound of birds could always be heard. Thomas was the farmer who worked the land. He was a tall man with broad shoulders, weathered from years of hard work. His hands were strong but rough, calloused from working with tools and handling the animals. Thomas had 2 daughters, Maria and Lucy. Maria, the older of the 2, was a natural worker. She had a practical way of looking at things and a calm attitude. She worked hard on the farm every day, carrying heavy buckets and tools without a second thought. She had learned from her father how to take care of the animals, harvest crops, and repair the fences. Everything Maria did was done quickly and efficiently. Lucy, on the other hand, was much more curious about the world. She liked to ask questions and dream about things beyond the farm. Her imagination was always running wild. She would often wander into the fields, staring at the clouds, wondering how the sky worked, or what it would be like to travel far away. While Maria worked hard, Lucy was often distracted by the world around her. Sometimes her father would call out to her to help, but Lucy was never quick to respond. "Lucy, stop daydreaming and help," Thomas would call from the fields. His voice was rough, and there was always a touch of frustration in it. But Lucy didn't always know how to respond. She wanted to help, but her thoughts were often lost in the questions and ideas swirling in her mind. Lucy sat under a tree one afternoon, staring at the blue sky. It was a perfect day, sunny, with a light breeze, and Lucy felt content. She thought about how nice it would be to leave the farm and see the world. But that wasn't possible. Her father needed her to be strong and work just like Maria did. Yet, no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't seem to focus like Maria. She wanted to be useful, but something always pulled her attention away. She had overheard the villagers talking about bravery. "You have to be brave in this world," they would say. People talked about facing storms, dealing with wild animals, or overcoming their fears. But Lucy didn't understand what bravery really meant. She heard it often, but couldn't figure out how to feel brave herself. "Am I brave?" she wondered, her fingers tracing shapes in the dirt. "I don't think I am." At that moment, Maria approached, wiping sweat from her brow. "Lucy, we need you to help with the hay. Stop staring at the sky. Come on, there's work to do." Lucy looked up at her older sister. Maria was always so confident. She never seemed to hesitate or second-guess herself. Lucy felt a pang of jealousy. "I'm "I'm not like you," she said softly, almost to herself. Maria frowned. "Don't be silly. If you want to be useful, you need to stop daydreaming and start doing. It's time you learned what it means to be strong." Lucy lowered her head, feeling a bit sad. "I don't know what it means to be brave. I can't seem to do what everyone else does." Maria sighed, but said nothing more. She went back to work, leaving Lucy alone with her thoughts. Lucy didn't know how to explain her feelings, but she was sure of one thing. She wanted to understand bravery. She wanted to prove that she could be strong, just like everyone else. One evening, after a long day of work, Lucy stood in the barn, staring at the animals. She loved them, but she didn't know how to take care of them the way her father and sister did. She wasn't strong enough. She wasn't brave enough. Thomas walked into the barn, his face tired. He looked at Lucy, who was standing by the cows, deep in thought. He shook his head and sighed. "Lucy, why do you always daydream? You need to be strong, just like Maria. If you can't focus and help, how will you ever take care of yourself?" Lucy's eyes widened. She had been trying, but she didn't understand what was missing. "I want to help, Father," she said quietly. I don't know what it means to be brave." Thomas sighed again, his frustration clear. "If you can't be brave, how will you ever survive on your own? You can't keep dreaming forever. Life isn't about dreams. It's about doing what needs to be done." The words stung, but Lucy didn't argue. Instead, she turned and left the barn, her heart heavy with confusion. She didn't want to disappoint her father, but she also didn't know how to change. That night, Lucy lay awake in her bed, staring at the ceiling. Her father's words echoed in her mind. "If you can't be brave, how will you survive?" What did that mean? What did bravery really feel like? Lucy didn't have the answers, but she knew one thing. She had to find them. By morning, Lucy had made up her mind. She couldn't stay in the village any longer. She needed to understand what bravery was, and she was going to find out for herself. She packed a small bag with food, water, and a warm cloak. She kissed her father and Maria goodbye, telling them she was going to learn about bravery. They didn't understand, but Lucy didn't care. She had made up her mind. As the sun rose, Lucy stepped onto the road, her heart racing with excitement and fear. She had no clear plan, but she was determined to find something that would help her understand bravery. Lucy's journey led her into the woods. The path was narrow, and the trees grew tall and close together. The air was damp, and the ground was soft beneath her feet. The deeper she went into the woods, the darker it became. She could hear the sounds of birds and animals around her, but they only made her feel more alone. As Lucy walked, the sky began to cloud over. The wind picked up, and soon it started to rain. Lucy pulled her cloak tightly around her and pressed on. The rain poured down, soaking her skin, but she didn't stop. Her feet slipped in the mud, and her heart raced as the storm grew stronger. Suddenly, a loud crack of thunder split the sky, followed by a flash of lightning. Lucy froze, her body shaking. She wanted to run, to hide, but she knew she couldn't turn back now. She'd come this far. "I have to be brave," she whispered to herself. "I can't stop now." With trembling legs, Lucy took a deep breath and continued walking. The rain poured harder, and the storm raged around her, but Lucy didn't stop. Each step was a battle, but she kept going. Slowly, her fear began to fade, replaced by a quiet sense of determination. Lucy continued on her journey, walking along the road that led through forests and open fields. The sun was setting, and Lucy felt a bit uneasy. She had never traveled far from the village before, and now she was all alone in a world that seemed so big and unknown. She missed the comfort of home, but she reminded herself of the reason she had left. She needed to learn what bravery truly meant. As she walked, she heard the sound of someone groaning. At first, she thought it was the wind, but when she looked to her right, she saw a man lying on the side of the road. His clothes were torn, and his face looked pale, as if he had been injured. He was barely conscious, and Lucy could see that his leg was bleeding badly. Without thinking, Lucy rushed to his side. She knelt beside him, her heart racing. She had no idea what to do, but she knew she couldn't just leave him there. She remembered the stories her father had told her about helping people, about being kind and strong in moments of need. "I need to help him," she thought, her hands shaking as she looked around for something to use. She pulled off her scarf and tied it around his leg, trying to stop the bleeding. The man winced as she did so, but his eyes stayed closed. Lucy felt scared. She had never tended to a wound before, but she pushed those feelings aside. After a few moments, the man stirred, his eyes flickering open. His voice was weak, but he managed to speak. "Thank you," he whispered. I didn't know how much longer I could last." Lucy smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest. "You're going to be okay," she said, though she wasn't sure if that was true. But she had done what she could. She had taken action when it mattered. Her heart swelled with pride. This was something her father would have done. Something that showed bravery in the face of uncertainty. The man tried to sit up, but Lucy gently pushed him back down. "You should rest. I'll stay here with you until you feel better," she said. The man's eyes met hers, and there was a faint smile on his face. "Thank you," he repeated, his voice full of gratitude. Lucy didn't know how much time passed, but after a while, the man's breathing steadied, and he looked less pale. The bleeding had stopped, and though he was still weak, he seemed much better. "Where are you headed?" the man asked, his voice hoarse. Lucy hesitated for a moment. "I'm looking for bravery," she said simply, unsure of how to explain it. "I'm trying to understand what it means." The man looked at her thoughtfully for a moment. "Bravery isn't just about fighting battles or facing danger," he said quietly. "Sometimes bravery is doing what you can, even when it's hard. You've already shown bravery by helping me." Lucy felt a small spark of understanding in her chest. She hadn't known if helping the man was brave, but now she realized it was. She didn't need to face some grand danger to prove her courage. Bravery was about doing what was right, even when you were scared. The next morning, Lucy set out again. She followed the road that wound through more forests and fields, feeling stronger with each step. As the sun rose higher, she came across a narrow wooden bridge. The bridge stretched across a fast-moving river, its waters swirling violently below. Lucy paused, looking at the bridge with apprehension. It didn't look sturdy. The planks creaked with every gust of wind, and she could feel her legs tremble. She had never liked heights, and the sight of the rushing water made her nervous. But she knew that she had no choice but to cross it if she wanted to continue her journey. Lucy took a deep breath and stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. Her feet were unsteady as she placed one foot on the bridge, then the other. The wood groaned beneath her weight, and she could feel the cold air rushing past her. She tried not to look down at the water, focusing only on the path ahead. Slowly, step by step, she moved across the bridge. With every step, the fear in her chest grew, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. She had promised herself that she would be brave. And being brave didn't mean not being scared. It meant doing what was needed despite the fear. When she reached the other side, Lucy let out a sigh of relief. She had crossed the bridge, and it felt like she had crossed a threshold in her heart as well. For the first time, she truly understood that bravery wasn't about being fearless. It was about moving forward, even when you were afraid. Now, from this point, the story will be continued in the next part.